So here in this case, we have A7 of clubs. We decided to flat the button. I'm fine with that. Pretty much in general, fine with flatting the button. And I actually do a fair amount of this in rebuy hour, even with some less than monster hands, just because I feel like people tend to play pretty straightforward post flop during the rebuy hour because I don't know if it just creates this dynamic where people assume that no one's folding or they just are really just trying to get value out of their big hands and not concerned with playing small pots. And I think that really creates opportunity where you can flat in these kind of spots in position with a kind of a wide range of hands or a wider range of hands than you'd think, and really just count on people to play pretty straightforward post flop where they're betting, consistently or they're betting bigger with their nut hands, their big hands, and being a lot faster to sure they'll still see bet and maybe occasionally, very rarely barrel on some very good barreling boards, but I think for the most part you'll see guys play pretty straightforward when they don't have a hand. They'll generally see bet and then give up, or maybe not even see bet on certain board textures. So you can really take advantage of that. And as soon as someone shows you they don't want the pot, you can pretty much take it with impunity. So I do like these kind of flats, even with less than A7 of clubs. During the rebuy hour, I think you can really take advantage of people's straightforward method of play. So here on this flop, that being said, I probably would just call. There's really not a ton of value in raising here, especially since I think people feel the same way about you, that you're not going to really be bluff raising the flop, especially with such a messy coordinated flop during the rebuy hour. It just means that you're just trying to get a ton of value out of a monster. So that does kind of go hand in hand also now with having to play some monster hands or some bigger hands a little bit more passively. In this case, top and bottom isn't on a three flush board isn't I guess I wouldn't call it a monster. Obviously, it is a very big hand, but that just means that you have to be playing it a little bit more passively, especially on these boards where there is another clear nut hand out here with the mate flush. So that does go hand in hand with the concept of how people generally play post flop during the rebuy hour. You need to keep that in mind yourself as far as how people will perceive you as playing. So I would play my nut hands a lot more passively, and I would be doing more things like taking advantage of dead pots or stabbing at dead pots, and making some small bluffs here and there, raising over c bets or maybe raising a weak turn bet, things like that. So here, that being said, with this top and bottom, I would definitely just call. And he bets the turn again here, and I probably would just call that too. The only reason I would consider raising is because of the bet size. We're talking, especially during the rebuy hour, about how people will play their monster hands big and fast. And I think that in this case, him betting only slightly over half the pot, I really don't think at this point that he has ace jack plus. I think it's pretty clear that he has ace with a spade or any ace, I guess, and maybe king queen with a spade, king 10 with a spade, hands like that where he's kind of just block betting or pricing it himself. I wouldn't expect him to have a made monster like a flush or a top two or set. Because if he did, I think that he would bet bigger, probably on the flop also, but on the flop and turn, I would expect a bigger bet. So, especially during the rebuy hour. So I would consider raising at this point just because of the weakness of his bet. If he had bet 3/4 pot or something like that, or a little bit bigger, I would just go ahead and call. But given that he bet this small, I might raise just to kind of punish those sort of hands that we're talking about. Maybe just make a small raise here and evaluate the river. But flatting is fine too. And then on this river, he checks. Seems like a pretty clear spot for value here. I'm actually a little surprised that we check back. When he checks this river, if he has the betting lead, and the river obviously changes pretty much nothing. If he has the betting lead, he's never going to check the river with a hand that has you beat. At this point, when he goes bet and you call, he's not going to get to this brick river, which the king is essentially a brick, get to this river card and not bet if he has you beat. So, if he rivered two pair or if he had you beat the whole way, he's definitely going to be betting here. So once he checks, you got to at least try to get some value out of those ace queen, ace 10 type hands that might make a bad call in the end here. I would definitely bet probably half the pot just to try to squeeze value out of those hands, maybe 525, something like that here. But you got to bet. You're good every time. And again, given that it's rebuy hour, we never expect guys to check over a big made hand on the river. They just always go for value. So that can just make you even more confident that you have the best hand here. And I'd be confident there regardless of rebuy hour or not, but even more confident during the rebuy hour.